Clearly, then, there are questions tonight, not just for Russia, but also for this new Ukrainian government and how it will respond going forward. Our correspondent, Gabriel Gatehouse, is in Kiev this evening for us.
Well, I think this is a very difficult situation indeed for this new Ukrainian government. Remember, it's a government that was put together just a couple of days ago, thrown together in the circumstances of the revolution. A bunch of disparate people that have come together and now taking over the functions of the state, a state which in many ways is still relying on volunteers and activists to keep law and order going. So this is a huge, huge challenge for them. But I can bet that behind the scenes, especially from the West, diplomats will be urging the people who are in charge here in Ukraine to exercise extreme caution. Do not make the mistake, they'll be saying, of Mikhail Saakashvili in Georgia in 2008. Do not respond rashly, because look at what happened there. It won't end well. It was very interesting seeing today Viktor Yanukovych, who appeared for the first time in southern Russia to give a press conference. He vowed he would fight on for the people of Ukraine. He denied that he'd been overthrown, and he again used this rhetoric of fascists and terrorists. We've heard the Russians use these words as well, and this, of course, is off the back of reports that there were far-right nationalist groups in amongst the protesters. Now, that certainly is true, but I've spent the past few days investigating to what extent the far right was the driver behind this revolution. In place of the defiant speeches, the sombre strains of Beethoven now ring out over Independence Square. This revolution is moving into a new phase. But amidst the flowers and the children's tributes, flashes of something more sinister. Groups of armed men strut through the square with dubious iconography. That yellow armband is a Volksangel, a German symbol used by several SS divisions during the Second World War. Far-right graffiti is appearing, daubed on the walls of the city. The people who brought down the government were overwhelmingly ordinary Ukrainians, students and doctors, workers and even families, people who simply refused to back down. But the most organised and perhaps the most effective were a small number of far-right groups. When it came to confrontations with the police, it was often the nationalists who were the loudest and the most violent. A group calling itself the Right Sector is perhaps the largest. Its members can be seen marching around Kiev in columns of about a dozen. Mostly they carry baseball bats. Sometimes they carry guns. We met these men posing for pictures outside the burnt-out remains of what was once their headquarters. I asked them about their political beliefs.
Национал-социалистская тематика иногда в некоторых людях она есть проступает. Как бы, чтобы была единая нация. Но не у всех это не заложено в основе этой организации, это у некоторых людей есть.
А у вас?
У меня лично есть.
В смысле? Объясните.
Мне как бы нравится эта идея единой нации. Я хочу, чтобы нация была единая, чтобы один народ, одна страна, одна нация.
А это подразумевается что?
Как бы, чтобы чистая нация. Не то, что там, как бы у Гитлера как было. В своем роде немножко, маленько, но было, чтобы своя нация.
What about the East, I asked? What about Crimea, where many Ukrainians feel close historical ties to Russia?
Кому нравится Россия, пусть едут в Россию. Украина только для украинцев.
Police have largely disappeared from the streets of Kiev. Law and order is maintained by so-called self-defense groups. Not all hold extreme views, but those who do are often shy of the cameras. We got a late-night phone call from another group known as C14, inviting us to meet their leader at their new base. It turned out to be the former headquarters of the Communist Party, now occupied by the far right.
It's our general mission to totally ruin chains that connect our country with the imperial power from the past.
And that being Russia.
Yes, we can do Russia, not only Russia, Soviet Union.
Are you a Nazi?
No, I don't think I'm a Nazi, I'm a Ukrainian nationalist.
What does that mean?
The main confrontation is about that some ethnic groups have control many business structures, some economic, some political forces, and
which ethnic groups?
Russians and Jews and the Poles. It may be some non-Ukrainian group control a huge percent of some economic or political power. And of course, in this situation, Ukrainian people have some tension between it, and it causes conflicts.
Mr. Karas says his group consists of around 200 men. C14 is affiliated with a political party called Svoboda, or Freedom, which now controls 4 ministries in the new government, including the Ministry of Defence. 2 of its MPs were recently photographed brandishing well-known far-right numerology. 88 stands for the 8th letter of the alphabet, HH, Heil Hitler.
We, as Svoboda, in no way espouse Nazism. In fact, we fight against Nazism. For us, Nazism and communism are 2 sides of the same coin. Those are both totalitarian ideologies which destroyed the Ukrainian nation in the 20th century and fought against Ukrainians and killed millions of Ukrainians.
The fervour of the revolution is beginning to fade now. People are starting to move on. But it's clear that it was the radical groups who kept up the pressure on Viktor Yanukovych, and many of them feel that this really is their victory. The question is, how much power will that give the far right in the new Ukraine? Ukrainian politics is in a state of flux. Different groups are jostling for position. Left-wing activists have also taken control of some government buildings, but it's the right that appears to be coming out on top.
When the fighting started, they started to attract more and more young people, and then not only young people, but all kinds of persons. Where they were marginal, regarded as marginal previously, now they are seen as being at the core of the protest, and therefore at the core of those who now have a popular legitimacy to make decisions.
With their anti-Russian rhetoric, events in Crimea will almost certainly play into the hands of the nationalists. No one knows exactly how strong they are in terms of numbers, but the influence of the far right in Ukraine is growing.
Gabriel Gatehouse with that report from Kiev. Now, Neil Hamilton has been described as many things in his long and varied career, but rarely, I think we can safely say, as a backroom boy. It was this phrase employed by UKIP leader Nigel Farage about his campaign manager that set the cat